Hello, my name is Sean Sands. Welcome back to You Can Play Europa Universalis IV, the series where we cover one basic concept of the game so that beginners and new players can dive in and understand a little bit more of how to play, what to do, jump right in. We always shoot for 5 to 10 minutes. We don't always get there like last episode. We'll see how we do today, but might be on the longer side because today I want to talk about your army and I want to start the conversation because there's a lot of different things you can talk about within the army, and at some point we're definitely going to want to get into all the details on the military screen, which is itself just rich with information. But I actually want to start just at the army level because this is where you're going to be interacting with your army the most. This is how you're going to make decisions about battles. This is when you're going to what you're going to work with as far as fighting, and there's a lot of information to process here. Not going to go through absolutely everything because I want to hit the highlights for you, just enough to go ahead and get you started and get you understanding the basics of what you're looking at when you click on an army. And the absolute basics is your units and just the way your army is sort of organized and the proportions you have to it. It will always have infantry, cavalry, and artillery. Not always available. Sometimes you might choose to have an army that's just infantry. You will rarely choose to have an army that is just cavalry or just artillery because it would be bad at fighting. For reasons you can go into at a deeper depth, just understand that infantry is almost always going to make up the lion's share of your army and should probably be what you have the most of. Now, of course, at the beginning of the game, you don't actually have access to artillery. I think you get that at military tech level 7, but once you do, you can add it in. These little buttons here are also a feature that is in one of the DLCs. It just allows you to add a army directly into it. So if I want to bump this up to 16 cavalry instead of 15, just click that. Each single number represents 1,000 men in that. So 15 represents 15,000 infantry for 4,000. Up here, you can also see the split of your army as well as a total, as well as your general. Your general is something that you can, is a person that you can hire using military points or estates or specific events to gain bonuses to your army. They come sort of like your leader with some specific numbers attached to them. Now, they're not influencing your military points in any way, but they are influencing how well you conduct certain phases of battle or how fast you move. So we'll go into the specifics of this when we talk about actual battles, because there are multiple phases of the battle, including a fire and a shock phase, and your maneuver and your siege have their own needs. And I don't want to overcomplicate things. I want to stay focused on the military because that's what we're doing. These 2 stars right here and 3 stars here are also indicative that there is a general connected, and the star is a quality level. So Viram Das is a 2-star general, while Sangha Tamara down here is a 3-star general. So what else are we looking at here? You can see the individual makeup of those regiments here. So we have 15 infantry listed, we have 4 cavalry, we have 8 artillery, so that as you conduct battles, different units, different regiments will take different degrees of damage. If the 6th regiment is at the very front lines and takes the brunt of an assault, while the 3rd regiment here, Golovad's 3rd regiment, is in reserve, then this regiment will have a lot fewer men at the end of the battle than this one does. So you can micromanage here which regiments are part of which army, particularly if you want to take weakened regiments and kick them out of your army and let them reinforce back in your homelands. These buttons over here are the ones you'll actually push as you are playing the game in general. They're not buttons you will push during battle, but they allow you to sort of take different actions. This is a good one to remember because it tells other armies, other allies, other vassals in the war, whether you want them to sort of merge up with your army. So let's say we had our 27,000 units here, but we knew we were going to potentially be fighting, 35,000 Delhi soldiers, and what we really wanted to do was consolidate our army. We had allies with us, so I would click this saying allow friendly armies to attach, and ideally and the AI makes its own choices sometimes. Other armies, in the war, would come and consolidate in and give me control. So we may have 5,000 guys from down here in Garham. We may have 20,000 from over here in Bengal, which is an ally of ours, and they all consolidate, and we'd have our 50,000 men army that we would move forward. It's a great button to press if you really want to consolidate into one mass. A lot of times you don't want to do that. A lot of times you want to split up and kind of flank your enemies or take certain areas of land. This allows you to split up your army in different ways. So if you wanted to do that thing, let's say this first regiment was low on men and I just didn't want them in the next battle, I can move them over there like that, create a new unit. Other things here is you can attach your army to another army. I don't know that I've ever pressed that button. If you're sieging down an area, you can click this to take the siege view. If you have mercenaries in your army, you can kick them out and make a separate army of just mercenaries. And this consolidates. So let's say we had a huge fight and our total army strength was down to 15,000 men, but we had 27 regiments in there, and it's just like, so that means a lot of these are going to be way lower on manpower than they were before. This is a way to say, okay, I'm not going to reinforce every regiment. I'm going to sort of scrunch it down to how many men I have. So if I have a total of 15,000 men, it would just kick out any kind of consolidate regiments. And so, if we were short, let's say we had lost 3,000 infantry in our previous battle, then we would reduce down to 12 infantry regiments instead of 15 to sort of get rid of those 3 that we lost. It's a button that's important, and why you want to do that is because the stronger your regiment is, the more it is toward its maximum capacity, the better it fights. So a 7th regiment, if it only had 200 guys as opposed to a 6th regiment with 1,000 guys, 6th regiment is going to fight better. So you don't necessarily want to go in battle with lots of regiments that have lots of lost men. This is something you actually do want to take a look at, particularly if you're in a very heavy war. This allows you to move faster so we can see here, if I move to this province, it would take me, it says it will arrive in Etowah on the 15th. If I click this button, force march, before I start moving, it accelerates, and now it's on the 12th. This comes at a tech level, I want to say 12 or 13 or something like that. And a lot of these you'll see are grayed out. It probably either means it's not relevant to the province I'm standing in, or I don't have the technology for it. A lot of these buttons, again, I rarely press. You can use your army to, for example, to refill a garrison. Let's say Rattenborough had been sieged down by an enemy, and my garrison, which is currently at 2,000 men, was down very low, but I knew it might get sieged again. I could use my army to refill that garrison. This is an important one. Enable army drilling. This puts your units into a drilling mode, and we'll see at the turn of the month that their morale goes away. You can only do this if there's a general in charge of the army. But what they're doing is essentially practicing, and this gives them an ability called army drill. It increases their, you can see here, as they do more drilling, this number will go from 0 to 100. And as it does, things like land fire damage and shock damage and movement speed will steadily increase. They're just better training. Finally, this thing right here is your morale, which is also represented by this bar that just turned red. Green is good, red is bad, high is good, low is bad. So we have our maximum morale that we can have. And you see here it's only 0.5. That's because we're drilling. If we look at another army, look at this guy over here, we can actually see, yeah, he has currently a maximum of 5.8 out of 5.8 because he is not drilling. A lot to learn, a lot to look at, but the basic things that you're going to think about is, what is the proportions of my army? This one's good, not great. I would ideally rather have slightly more artillery and probably a slightly bigger difference between infantry. If I was going to have, my ideal right now would look like, if I was going to keep the 4 cavalry, would probably be something like 22 for and 13 or 14, maybe 15, just sort of that proportional range. Bigger gap between cavalry and infantry, just because I'm playing a country that doesn't have any particularly cavalry bonuses. If you were playing something like Poland after they get the winged hussars, and I may be mispronouncing that, or one of the steppe nations that has just a huge bonus to cavalry ability, you might have more cavalry in proportion to your infantry. But seeing how many guys you got, seeing the proportion of them, checking to see, you know, your general stats, making sure that your armies are, your regiments are topped off, and making sort of key decisions about whether other armies can attach, whether you're going to consolidate regiments, and whether you want to drill them are the most common things you're likely to do in this screen. You can also do things during battles like detach a siege, or even just flat out split the army in half. And you can see it did the best it could because it was an odd number. Those are other things you can do. You can delete the whole thing if you wanted to. I'm not going to click that button, but it does pretty much what you think it would. Lots of good information you get from that screen. You get it just by clicking the little number right on your guys. Yeah, that's sort of basics. Up here's some stuff we'll get into as we talk about more specifically about actual conflict and battles, as well as sieges, and looting as well, because this is good information to have. I don't look at it very often here, but it's nice to know. But it's more directly related to some of the interactions of armies together, either fighting or sieging. So that's kind of a quick look at your army menu. There's probably other stuff I didn't really get to here. There's, you know, how far along in your army professionalism the army is. Sort of a deeper thing. I don't even remember for sure if that's a specific to a DLC or not. I didn't get into scorched earth, burning colonies, autonomous suppression. Those are all sort of things that you might want to know at a later date. But if you're just getting started, you want to know numbers, you want to know how they should be related to one another, and you want to know how to get your army to do some basic things. So that should be enough to get you going with a game of EU4, and you can do it. So go do it, because it's fun. Until next time, my name is Sean Sands. Thank you for joining me, and we will see you again real soon.